You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of The Voice of Reason. My name is Ted Durden. I'm a Southern Democrat.
And my name is Mark Reed, a West Coast Republican.
And together we are The Voice of Reason. For those of you tuning in for the very first time, this is a politically motivated podcast where civil discourse is the order of the day. Well, Mark and I find that we have more things that unite us than we do that divide us. And having said that, as I always do, I toss the ball over to my co-host, Mark Reed.
Well, this week it's my turn to start off with some kind of a monologue or a beginning point. I read a quote from Stalin just the other day, and it's really poignant to what's happening in our country today. And that is Stalin once ripped all the feathers off of a live chicken as a lesson to his followers. He then set the chicken on the floor a short distance away from him. The chicken was bloodied and suffering immensely, yet when Stalin began to toss some bits of wheat towards the chicken, it followed him around. He said to his followers, "This is how easy it is to govern stupid people. They will follow you no matter how much pain you cause them, as long as you throw them little worthless treat once in a while." We've been on lockdown now, and I agree with it, and I think America's doing a great job. I think that the lockdown was warranted. We didn't know what we were dealing with. China completely lied to us. They lied to us about the origin of this virus. They lied to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization, the WHO, lied to the world is on top of it. China was immediately out buying over $1 billion worth of PPE throughout the countries. They knew exactly what they were dealing with. All the evidence is starting to roll in from behind the Iron Curtain of China. Why our elected officials, especially in Congress, are so ignorant and stupid to believe what the hell is coming out of China is beyond me. Why they continue to pamper, support, and back China as if it is a democracy of some kind and not an adversary, a serious adversary. We beat Russia, but China is the main one now. And I said this to a diplomat back in 2009 when I was asked by him, who do I feel is the world's biggest threat? And I said China. And he asked why. I said, because they've stated it. They want to become, by 2049, at their 100-year anniversary, they want to become the world dominant power. This bacteria, this virus that was now they're saying it accidentally came out of the virology laboratory in Wuhan. Before they said, no way, it just naturally was created in a bat. They're going to find out later that it was a a project by the military, by the virology laboratory there. It got out, whether it got out purposely or accidentally. They're saying accidentally now, but before that, they denied all existence of it. It just happened to come about and evolved in a bat and a snake, all by accident, and it got into human beings. Now they're finding out it was lax protocols in the virology lab. They were written up on it prior to that. I think it was easily 6-7 months prior to that about the loose regulations that they were following, protocols they were following in that laboratory. But they knew exactly. As soon as it got out, the people in Wuhan were forbidden to travel the rest of China. We talked about this the last time, that Beijing and I did it again.
You did. Why am I drawing?
Shanghai, exactly. They had the least reported cases, the least reported deaths.
Yeah, right.
And so now we're finding out the actual travel restrictions that were placed in Wuhan. The people of Wuhan were not allowed to travel throughout China. However, the people of Wuhan were allowed to travel throughout the world. What does that tell you? It tells you that China, the CCP leadership in China, knew exactly what was going on, and they infected the world. Let's use some common sense here. I know our political leaders don't want to come out and say it because they don't want some kind of backlash from China. Well, what the hell backlash are they going to get from China at this point? We've already got it. Trillions and trillions of dollars are being lost. The economy is upended. Everybody is upended. The way of life throughout the world is upended. We have in this country at this point, we have the left who hates Donald Trump, Doesn't matter what the hell Donald Trump did. He could have stopped it right at the shores of America. And you know what? The Democrat leadership, not Democrats, Democrat leadership would still look at him, and the hateful division that's in America would say, well, President Trump probably had something to do with the creation of the virus, right? Let's get a grip, everybody, in this country. The people of the country are all suffering, whether they're Republican, Democrat, or no party affiliation. It doesn't matter. Society at this point has been put under martial law without the National Guard being called up. We are under martial law. Our constitutional rights are being completely removed at this point. You can't congregate. You can't do anything. It has to, by the recommendations of the CDC in Washington, D.C., and the leadership, the coronavirus task force as well, we have to do our own risk assessment. I'm a pretty healthy guy. I'll still go out now and I wear a mask when I go into the supermarkets. If I went into a restaurant, I'd wear a mask. I would do the social distancing as well. It's common sense to use the knowledge that we have been given. We know who is vulnerable to this. Certain ethnic groups, as we discussed last time, the black community with high blood pressure, you got diabetes, you got some obesity involved in there.
Right.
There's other people who have obesity. We've identified the vulnerable individuals within society, the older people. So we use common sense and risk factors. We are a free people. We use common sense. I don't need a government to tell me what the hell to do at this point. No. And Americans have never needed a government. We're not a communist country. We're not a socialist country. We have our Bill of Rights, our Constitution. I agree, though, in the beginning, it was good. We had no idea what it was going to do. We were being lied to by China, the originator of this. Mm-hmm. We were being lied to by the World Health Organization, so we didn't know what we were dealing with. So to shut down and stop it, great. I'm all for that. But now it's beyond. We have a governor now and a mayor in the city of Los Angeles says we're going to have no social gatherings till 2021.
That's insane.
Absolutely insane.
That's insane.
They are so disconnected, and I've worked in diversity, and I've been flown throughout the country to speak on diversity and speak on our rights and everything else. And let me tell you something. The one thing I've always resented more than anything, because I kind of consider myself a common person, mm-hmm. right? I've succeeded in life. I've done well. I don't like to talk about it or brag about it. I've been blessed, okay? But the truth of it is I've never wanted to become disconnected from the average person that's working from paycheck to paycheck, mm-hmm. lives in an apartment, okay, or still living at mom and dad's house, and are struggling to get out of mom and dad's house, to break out on their own and get their own apartment and do their own thing. I've always resented watching people on television that have a $2,500 suit on, probably making over $1 million a year, telling us what the hell to do and what it's like to live.
No, and I agree with you. I mean, I know one thing, especially in the state of New York, this virus really put on display as far as the disparity between, in that particular state, between the haves and the have-nots, because you had those that are affluent. They were able to go out to the Hamptons to get away from the inner city.
Right.
But the everyday person living paycheck to paycheck, especially the service industry, they had to stay there and deal with this virus. They could not remove themselves from it. So it created a huge, enormous disparity. And I didn't hear about this 2021 because that's insane. Some friends and I were talking as far as I think there should be a gradual rollout in the sense that we need to get back to the business of living. We have got to. Even if they do it where they allow the restaurants to open up, but limit the number of patrons that go inside.
Well, he rolled out the federal recommendations, and that's mm-hmm. all in there. Bars won't be able to open. The sporting events, I kind of agree for a little while to hold off on them for a little bit. They're rolling it out at this point, and I agree with what's been rolled out. Mm-hmm. However, the feds have limited control because of the 10th Amendment.
Oh, yeah, right.
The states have the right to implement what they want to. Mm-hmm. The counties have the right to implement what they want to. And so when you look at our state, the state of California, there's going to be civil war if they continue on the path that they're going on.
Right, because
it's just like in what is it, Michigan?
Oh, right,
They came out and they protested against the governor over there, and she comes out, oh no, so they had the rebel flag out there, and the people are going to get hurt by coming out here.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, if you look at Michigan, and that's a good example, they had one of the most restrictive measures in the country,
Right.
which was just absolutely ridiculous. And like we were just talking about, you cannot compare New York to California. New York people live on top of each other. California, we're spread out. Even when you look at the number of deaths we have here in this state, one of the counties that have the fewest amounts of corona-related deaths is in Ventura because it's spread out.
Yeah.
After that is San Bernardino because it's spread out. Same thing Riverside because it's spread out. Where do you have the largest volume? In Southern California, in L.A., where people are living on top of each other. And the same thing in the Bay Area.
Right.
So you have to approach this. I mean, the gubernatorial level, that's fine.
Well,
but at that point, you got to get down to the local level.
When you're talking about the numbers in the state of California, we have almost 40 million people in the state of California.
Right.
Less than 1,000 people have died. That's 1 out of 40,000 people. You're more apt to get run over by a car.
It's less than 1%.
Okay, it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
Okay, it is so crazy what's going on. They expected so many people to be showing up at the hospitals. They're already closing down the government built ones by the Army Corps of Engineers. They're closing them out because no one showed up.
Right, and even the Navy ship, it's going to be leaving soon.
Yeah. I mean, this is where it's absolutely crazy. But you look at it deeper of what's happening. Our civil rights, our freedoms were all usurped under the guise of fear. The press dug into it. Now, we have our guest, Dr. Wen Chen, back, and we're going to be talking further about the Belt and Road Initiative of China. We're going to talk about the human rights violations and tortures in China, the selling of body parts in China, and exactly what our adversary really represents. Because I said this in the last episode. After this virus is dealt with and it's gone, we're going to have to deal with China. And our elected officials, my opponent, coming out constantly saying, oh, we need to work with the world and the world leaders about dealing with. Look, America is number one. Flat out. We are the leaders of the free world.
Right.
I'm never going to give that up. We are the leaders of the free world. We have a 360 million person population. We're an open society. We do not lie. We lie on our taxes, mind you, but we don't lie. The government doesn't lie about what the hell is going on in this country pertaining to viruses and the CDCs and the world epidemics and stuff. We share. We're shipping, even though Russia is an adversary, we're shipping over ventilators to Russia to help them out. We're shipping ventilators out throughout the world. We're not asking for something in return. America has always been the leader in humanity and helping people out.
Right.
Period.
Right. And
we've always stood up against human rights violations.
Right.
For us to normalize and to not look back at the history, going back to 73 or 72 when Nixon and Henry Kissinger opened up trade with China.
Right.
Okay, and they say that China's a developing nation. Well, hold on a minute. I look at people and go, hold on. I stop them in the conversation. Hold on a minute. America is the youngest nation on the face of the earth.
That we are.
And we're not a developing nation. We are the supreme nation. We're not overdeveloped. We're still developing because we are at the leader. We're at the front of everything in the world.
And see, and that's where China comes in, because China is an insidious enemy. They're insidious in the sense that the way that they come to the United States, as far as their plan for world domination, it is done through manipulation, intellectual, technological, and economic. Those are the 3 points of the
PR. Remember the PR, media, social media, films, television, newspapers.
Yeah, the dissemination of misinformation.
See, we're both old enough to remember Vietnam, and Vietnam wasn't won on the battlefield. Vietnam was won by the disinformation of Russia.
Yeah.
because they went out there, they filmed it, they showed it to the Americans couldn't stomach it anymore, just like Americans can't stomach right now a little virus running around. I keep putting this out there. Just look at numbers. 2.8 million people die from 10 top, viruses and problematics of the human body, the human existence. 2.8 million people die. We've had 27,000 or 28,500 people die from the coronavirus. They're adding people in with influenza that got pneumonia. Right now in New York, which is the majority of the deaths, okay, they say that only 60% of the deaths that are counted right now are actually positive tested corona cases, which is 16,200. So you look at that and you say there's only 16,200. Well, wait a minute. Influenza is expected to kill over 60,000 in America. We have vaccines for that. We have treatments for that. It's going to kill them. Why are they doctoring these numbers? Why are they adding everything in there they possibly can?
And I think that's the big mistake that they're making, because it seems like every related death they're trying to tie into the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And I know that isn't true. Are there potential underreported cases? That's possible, absolutely. And I know, and Mark and I agree, we're not trying to minimize the tragedy of the situation.
Not close.
Because if it touches one person, that's one person too many.
Look,
we're not trying to, but
I've said this to other people,
just trying to, we're just putting it in perspective, because the biggest thing that's going on right now is just trying to control the spread of it. That's it. That's all.
Well, the biggest thing, Ted, is the risk assessment aspect of it, because I've had people go after me and say, well, if one of your family members was vulnerable to getting it. Look, I have a daughter, okay? She's 40 years old. She has a compromised lung issues. If she got the coronavirus, the probability is she's better than 50% she would be taken out.
Hell, I have asthma.
Yeah,
I'm 62. I have asthma.
Right.
So
we're both in the age category. I'm 63. Okay, if I get it, I'm pretty healthy, but who knows? It might take my ass out. I don't know.
Right.
Okay, my wife is 63. She's got a chronic cough going on all the time. We don't know what it is, but if she got me, she'd die. It's not that. We have individual personal responsibility of when we go out, we have to know our own health.
Right, we do.
Okay, I'm not going to sit here and start making out with this microphone, because I have no idea who's breathed on it, spit on it, or whatever. And if I'm going to touch it, I'm not going to stick my hands in my face. I was taught this stuff as a kid. It's called common sense.
Right.
But when you have leadership they do not know how to practice a simple risk assessment of common sense. Now, granted, like I said in the beginning, when they didn't know what the hell was going on. That's why it was a slow start on both the Democrats. Remember the video that's out there? It shows every Democrat out there saying, go to Mardi Gras, go to the fish market in San Francisco,
right, yeah.
Nancy Pelosi, all the leadership in New York. Oh, keep doing what you're doing. They were saying that all the way through February. They did not understand the severity of this virus
Nobody did.
Because China was lying about it. They knew exactly, their actions proved they knew exactly what the hell was going on.
Even Dr. Partee, who's the leading spokesman nowadays, he didn't know, because in February he said the exact same thing. It was based on misinformation that he received. I'm going to make one quick public service announcement when we're talking about using common sense.
Right.
And here's the thing. Everybody wears masks because now they're required to. Not everybody wears gloves. Everybody's practicing their social distancing, which is great. Food for thought. You go to the grocery store, you go to a gas station. You keep your social distance. You're paying with a credit card. What are you using? You're using that keypad. So if you don't have gloves on, you're using that keypad. If you have somebody in front of you who doesn't have gloves on and use that keypad, guess what? You just touched what they just did. You got it, because
but even if they have gloves on, it's just like when I went to the bank. She
No.
was wearing gloves, and I refused to touch anything that she is touching. She's using the gloves to prevent her from getting the virus droplets on her hands.
Right.
The gloves have it. It's going to live
Right.
on the gloves longer. You have to get into a simple practice of not touching your face when you're touching things in the public, and that's it. You get home, you wash your hands. You go to a restroom, you wash your hands. That's it. What I agree with on the mask aspect of it, whether you're sick or you're not sick of wearing the mask, what you're doing is you are preventing more droplets coming out. If you're asymptomatic, Okay, meaning you don't have any symptoms at all, and you go somewhere and you're talking, you're spitting, it's naturally droplets are going. You're preventing the droplets from going all over the place.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay? You're helping stop the spread.
And just real quick, because I know we're moving on really quickly.
Yeah, we are.
Don't be stupid like this one gentleman was who was in a grocery store. This happened about 2 weeks ago. He was angry for whatever reason and took it upon himself to purposely cough on the sales clerk, on the cashier. He was quickly arrested. Don't be stupid. Anyway, go ahead, Mark.
On that, we're gonna go to our first advertisement, and we're gonna bring on our special guest. We've kind of been doing a little bit of a series with Dr. Wen Chen from Caltech. She's a biologist and virologist as well, and we're going to talk about the Belt and Road initiative from China. We're going to talk about the human rights violations, the abuses, the basic takeover that China is really trying to implement throughout the world. So we'll see you on the other side of the advertisement. Back, everybody, to the Voice of Reason. Welcome back, Dr. Wen Chen. You know, I've said this a few times, that we will beat the virus. The world will beat the virus.
Yeah.
The aftermath, though, of what we are going to do, a lot of people are starting to talk about it, with the aftermath and relations with China. The world view of China now has shifted drastically about it. But most everybody is still not talking about the directive of China. And it's always been there. It's been laid out. Ever since 1973, when the world trade, they were brought into the trade, and they were looked upon. And we honestly believed if we did trade with them, they were going to become a democracy, they were going to play nice, and they were going to treat their people well. And we went through the trade aspects. We started doing technology, medicine, all kinds of intellectual property rights, trade with them, exchange, even up to military. We've been dealing with them. And some of our top generals have come out and said, we've been played the fool, because we are not looking at China's real actions. They've been acting like what's the possum? It's called a possum in the South. The possum lays down in the road and plays dead.
Right.
Okay, so China's been acting like, they're just a nice people. They're the China, the CCP, the Communist Party of China. They act like they're a developing nation, but they have initiatives. One of the biggest initiatives they're looking at was started in 2013 and 2016, really kind of got going forward. And this is the Belt and Road Initiative. And the Belt, people think about the Belt and Road, you think about it because nobody knows about it. It's not talked about on television. Belt are the actual above ground highways. This is all for trade. This is all creating the supply chains. And there's 6 different regions that they're trying to dominate. And we won't get into those because we don't have all the time. And then the road, people think in America, road, okay, we're building, no. The Belt are the roads, the over-the-ground passageways. The roads actually are the Silk Road, which is the waterways. They want to dominate in every single one of these. How is this? You know about it because you brought it up to me, and I had to actually research it myself. You know a lot about it. Tell us in a quick summary what it is about and what's the dangers of it.
I want to first address what you mentioned at the beginning, like when we, start to bring China into WTO. Like I think that generally speaking, the whole Western society has a very naive view about the Communist Party, because basically, like everyone here in the U.S. just thought they were normal people, but they are not normal people. The communists, they are mafia.
Yes.
I mean, they will not change because you give them money. They will not change because you keep dialogue with them. So they have an agenda whenever you trade with them. And the Belt and Road Initiative, like it's also called the Silk Road Initiative, it sounded like a very nice project that China wanted to help those countries, those are in poor financial situation. They promise that we're going to build this port for you, we're going to build an airport for you, and don't worry about the cost, we're going to send the construction workers, we'll do everything, just pay us later. But actually it's a financial trap. China has about 150 countries in this Belt and Road Initiative, including Italy. That's the first European countries signing. So basically the deal is that, okay, the prices for this infrastructure are marked very, very high. So basically it's like someone coming to your house, say, we're going to build a luxurious kitchen for you. Don't worry about the money, but it costs $2 million. Like you didn't realize that until it's time for you to pay.
Right.
And the reason they can get this government of this country to sign this contract because of the corruption. For example, in Malaysia, like the former prime minister of Malaysia, like later on people found that when Malaysia signed the Belt Road Initiative, the money actually went to the personal bank account of the former prime minister. So the money was paid to him. Of course, he signed the contract.
Right.
But then the country end up paying for the money for the infrastructure, and it's so expensive that they cannot afford it. And then what China would do is they come back. For example, in Sri Lanka, one of their biggest port, Hambantota port, they cannot pay for the cost. Then China say, okay, let us use the port, occupy the port for 99 years. So basically, it's a financial trap. They use a corruption to let this government to sign the contract and then get the whole country into debt. When they cannot pay for the money, they say, China say, let us take over the airport, let us take over the port. And because this is how China turn these countries into their colonies to expand their military influence through all these critical countries.
So they created major footprints in there, but actual control as well of the infrastructure that they were building. It's very similar to, I'm American Indian, I'm part American Indian, so I watched all the contracts of the mafia organizations that were building the casinos on Indian land. They would go in there and they'd build a casino, and they would say, okay, you have to make profit within 5 years. If you don't make profit in 5 years, it's our casino. And they were never making profit, so they took over the casino. So now they had this mafia organizations out of Las Vegas, right? They built a lot of these casinos on Indian land, and they own them. So basically, this is why I relate it. It's like, wow, because they don't talk about it on our press here. But the biggest thing is, it's imperative to touch upon how they've infiltrated all of media. It's their PR stamp in social media, movies, because they've bought out studios. They have bought out radio stations. They have bought out newspapers. They control the media. Even Bloomberg came out and said, because he's been real soft on China, because he has major investments in China. And he says, look, you go to another country, you go to get a permit, they tell you this is what you can and can't do, and either you accept the conditions of the permit or you don't. And he wants to make money, so he accepts the conditions. But those conditions reach over into his reporting in America as well. So China has been on a forefront of PR, of making China look like it's a industrialized nation, nice and fair. It's opened up to the world. I sent you a video, and I said, "Isn't it?" Because it was being presented to me. This is Wuhan, right? And I said, "Wow, this looks really
a propaganda video."
I thought it was. I was really amazed at the technology and the architecture. I was like, "Wow!" I couldn't believe it was Wuhan because my cousin lives close there, and I was like, Dr. Chen, is this
If
Wuhan?
you
Like,
have
oh, no.
ever watched the video created by Hitler,
Oh yeah.
you will feel the same.
We've all seen that.
So I wasn't shocked when you said no. These are just really highlights, of China, and it's a propaganda piece that's put out there, and people are being paid. So let's move from the anything else you want to add about the Belt and Road, because this is an initiative that actually it's pushed out to 2049. They wanted to have it complete by 2049, which would give them the financial prowess throughout the world, because they're going to control all of the supply chains throughout the world in the 6 major regions in the world. Okay, so everything would go back to China. They have the labor force. So it's anything else you want to add?
Well,
about it?
once they start to build the infrastructure, like they basically have the control of the country, especially once they let Huawei 5G enter
Right.
the market, because basically they will control everything. Like China can press a button unless you lose all the electricity, and they can just shut down the whole system
Right.
of the whole nation. So
Right.
it's really dangerous, and I think like especially in those European countries, when they have very difficult financial situation, like and that's also how coronavirus first invaded these countries. Almost like, just think about Italy, right? Like actually the coronavirus outbreak was from the Chinese people who went there
We
to
went back
work.
to Italy, right?
Yeah, like
There's
they were
there's
about like a
100,000.
quarter. Like
There's
they-
100,000 workers from China that work in Italy, right?
Yeah.
And they were back in Wuhan for the new year. And so when the outbreak kind of started buzzing around in there and the quarantine aspect was buzzing around, like I mentioned in the beginning, they weren't allowed to go to other places in China, but they were allowed to leave.
Yeah.
Right. They allowed international
Right.
travel out of Wuhan.
Yeah.
Right.
And Italy was especially naive because of the Belt and Road Initiative they signed. They were so naive that they didn't block people from Wuhan from coming to Italy, and they had definitely no screen, no check at the airports, and it's just unbelievable. Like their patient zero actually was a Wuhan couple who went to Italy as tourists. They toured Rome for like 7 days. They spread coronavirus all over the place.
And how our U.S. officials can't? I think that they're holding back right now. I think they have, and they're getting the evidence. I think they wanted to deal with the virus here first, but their intelligence is digging up more and more information of
Right,
what the
yeah.
heck is going on, because common sense tells you that they knew about it,
Yeah,
because they
I-
bought
I-
up over $1 billion of PPE
Right.
from other nations in January, so they knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah, I heard that Trump mentioned that, I believe, at a news conference earlier today or yesterday, that they've started investigating exactly what happened in China where the virus came out. There was an indication that the virus was spread inside the laboratory from a bat to a human, and then the bat was released out into the wild.
Yeah. On that note, we're going to take our midline break to pay our bills, and then we're going to be back. We're going to be discussing the human rights violations and the history of China of killing over 80 million people over the last 70 years of China, and how little respect or regard they have for life of their own people. Hi, I want to welcome Rusty Levin and Harry Nabanian, both trial lawyers for workman comp cases. If you're injured on the job, don't hesitate. Contact an attorney. I did when I was wounded or injured on my job, and I thought I would trust my employer, and it didn't work out quite well. So I found Rusty Levin, handled my case like a professional, worked out way better than any other lawyer that I talked to would have worked out. So Rusty, tell us a little bit about your company of Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers.
So at our firm at Levin Albania Trial Lawyers, we handle all matters of workers' compensation, personal injury, and employment disputes, wrongful termination matters, and things like that. We were able to help Mr. Reed out with his workers' compensation case. Unfortunately, workers' compensation injury can be very stressful, intense situation. And at Levin Albanian, we try to get you the most benefit we can of the law, while also easing the stress and anxiety that comes along with that situation, and getting you back on your feet. My partner, Mr. Labandian, he handles the personal injury sides, and I'll let him take it from there.
And just like all injured employees out there, anybody else who gets injured as a result of somebody else's negligence has rights, and the rights that they need to protect immediately. And they should do that by calling Levin and Albanian Trial Lawyers and letting us help ease that tension off of you and get you the result you deserve, while also making sure that you get better in the progress. So we're here for you, folks.
Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers is the best company for you to get a hold of when you're injured or have a personal injury. So give them a call at
213-232-4848, 213-232-4848. Thank
and
you.
let them handle the stress for you while you recover at home. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Ted Durden. And I want to take a moment to talk to you about trust, and I trust churchandlaw.com. When it comes to workers' compensation and employment law, you can trust churchandlaw.com. If you ever need legal advice you can rely on, it's churchandlaw.com. Black and white, no gray, churchandlaw.com. 818-230-3110, churchandlaw.com. A law firm you can trust and count on.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. I want to dive right into the media and how our media has failed. I've testified in front of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, on 4 different occasions about vertical integration and consolidation, which is a uniformity of thought throughout our nation. We do not have any more investigative reporting. And then when you look at the problems that have been created now with our relationship with China, with our media outlets and China owning media outlets here in America, and China very mafia style saying, you can't report on this. Let's go ahead and pull up, Sam, pull up pictures A and B. This is Gola Rong.
Gao Rongrong.
Gao Rong. She was tortured and beaten and scarred for life. But this is common practice in China. And because you showed me the 2 books here and the torture methods, even though they're 6-7 years old, it's still going on. But our investigative reporting throughout the world agencies as well, are not reporting on this because China is a brutal country that lives behind the Iron Curtain. Tell us about what you know of because I know that you know.
Well, let's just go back to that picture, Gao Rongrong. She's a Falun Gong practitioner. She was arrested in China around 2005, and that was not the first time she was arrested because she practiced Falun Gong, a traditional Chinese meditation practice that the Chinese Communist Party thought is a challenge to their brainwashing system because they don't want any independent thinking to be popular in China. So Gao Rongrong, as you can see from the picture, she was a beautiful young woman.
Yeah,
and she was tortured to give up the police tortured her to give up her practice. And the picture also showed after she was tortured by the electric baton. She actually died in 2005 after that picture was taken. And that's just a tip of iceberg. We're talking about at any given time, China has 500,000 Falun Gong practitioners, 500,000 people like her detained in China at any given time because of their practice of Falun Gong. We're also talking about the Uyghurs. There's about 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps in Xinjiang, and they're called re-education camps. So these are the stories of anyone who stick to their personal belief, even just stick to traditional Chinese culture, like Falun Gong.
This was taught to me in business when I was growing up, and it said greed is the number one reason why most businesses will fail. And I'm looking at this going, the corporations, the world corporations here in America and other countries, their greed is getting the best of them when they're setting up shop and business with China. And especially in the media. The media is, I always say, it's the fourth estate. It's the CIA of the people. This is why in China they completely don't allow it. They control the internet, they control the phones, they control everything there in every communist country. So China forbids, beats, tortures, kills people. But going even further from there, Sam, if you can pull up picture number C. We touched on this the last episode you were here, and that is the sale of body parts. And you showed the graph to us about every single body part and how much it cost. It is common knowledge in the Chinese hospitals that if you have a problem, you got a kidney problem, you got the money, you can get a kidney in 2 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, why isn't the press? Why isn't the world press? Why isn't the World Health Organization reporting on this?
So let's talk about the organ harvesting in China. China has been practicing taking organs from death row prisoners. That is going on for decades. Okay, even in the 90s, 70s, 80s, they already started to do that. But ever since they started the persecution towards Falun Gong, they suddenly found a group of excellent quoted donors, because this is a meditation group. They meditate. They don't smoke. They don't drink. They live a healthy life. And they suddenly realize this is millions of people with healthy organs they can take at any time. And we have seen numerous, we are talking about hundreds of pieces of evidence by patients from Western hospitals say, I went to China, I have a scheduled heart transplant in 2 weeks. There's no way you can do that unless someone was killed for you.
Right.
And so it was very clear it's going on. And we also know, as a Chinese myself, we know for thousands of years, Chinese people believe in Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism.
Right.
So in our traditional culture, no matter what kind of belief you are, people believe in reincarnation. They don't donate organs, not even to their family members, for the cultural reason, because people feel we're going to come back in 20, 30 years to see our family members again. Mm-hmm. So according to Red Cross China, the whole nation in 2010, only 34 people donated their organs. But look at the numbers of surgeries done by Chinese hospitals.
Right.
Chinese hospitals perform about 100,000 transplants each year. You just look at these numbers, it's not right.
No.
But let's talk about why media, the Western media, remain silent towards this. There were some reports, I've seen some reports, but I would say comparing to this whole crime, so well known now, our media should have done much more than that. And I want to talk a little about how Western media is infiltrated by the Chinese government. Number one, of course, they can directly buy the media. Mm-hmm. Radio stations, San Francisco Examiner was bought by a Chinese family in San Francisco.
That I knew, yes.
That family has a close tie to the Chinese government. And of course, once this media belong to a Chinese government-controlled company, there's no way they'll report any human rights abuse in China.
Right.
And number two, they do this through buying ads or pay for the supplements. If you look at the picture number D about China Watch, China Watch is controlled by the Chinese government. It's a English newspaper supplement. Basically look like a newspaper. It was all the contents came from China by the government, and they are distributed by mainstream media like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Los Angeles. The Chinese government pay these mainstream media to distribute this China Watch supplement as a part of the newspaper. Okay, it's paid ad, it's sponsored by the Chinese government, but they look like a regular newspaper.
Well, how many journalists are basically sent here to learn journalism from China? The Communist Party members, they're sent here, they go to college, and they're still controlled because, as we've talked about, the individuals that come here from China, they go through the colleges, they're watched heavily. Mm-hmm. They're surveilled as well.
Yes.
The Chinese consulate here will keep tabs on them, let them know, we're watching you, you need to do this. So how many news reporters are there that are from China that have infiltrated the media here, even though China doesn't own the newspaper or the TV or the radio station? How many reporters that are still connected to China are actually working in China? Do you have an idea of that?
Well, number one, if you are ethnic Chinese, as long as you have families in China, they have a way to keep them as hostages. For example, if I were a Chinese reporter, if I came from China, right, they can threaten, say, if you report anything bad about China, you're never going to see your family in China again. That itself is already a big threat. Right. That's one thing for every Chinese citizen, every ethnic Chinese, as long as you have family in China, will go through this. And number two, they directly send spies as students. They were already spies. Before they came, they were spies, but they were sent here deliberately to learn journalism and apply for positions in Voice of America, in Radio Freedom Asia, in Los Angeles Times. The second. There are many of them. It's very bad. The Chinese government actually turn every Chinese American. They are trying to turn every Chinese American to become their spy or agent. because they can threaten them and they can, you know.
And I know something else that they do as well. They will also hire American journalists because American journalists is very lucrative there in China. So again, it's another way that they manipulate the media. So if you are employed by the CCP and you work for them, then you're going to report on what happens in China according to their standards, even though you're an American. And so you have an American face on misinformation put out by the Communist Party.
Yeah.
And that's another angle that they take.
We're going to go into our last ad, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about that map of the infiltration of media throughout the world and how they're controlling it very effectively, and also through the colleges and so forth. So, Sam, we're going to go to our last advertisement.
My erstwhile opponent says I don't accept debate invitations. I accept the League of Women Voters invitation.
The League of Women Voters LA chapter was the one who invited him to the 5 debates with a battered women's organization, with a synagogue, 2 churches, and the American Legion. And he turned down them all flat with the League of Women Voters. Back. We're covering a lot of subject matter here, and it's a lot of subject matter our mainstream media does not cover. Now, on picture E, Sam, it shows the map of the media and the infiltration throughout the world that China has very eloquently engaged in over the decades, because they have a master plan. They really do. And a couple of them we were just talking about it is Zoom. I know that everybody has been basically warned about Zoom. China is following everybody. The 5G technology in the phones, it's going to be automatically put in to all the phones now, so they can track every movement. And TikTok, that app, the same thing. China can surveil. This is all a major plan.
And just real quick before you go on, Mark,
Yes.
what you may not know, TikTok is owned by a company called, ByteDance. It's a company that's based in China. Now, if you live in China, you can't get it, but you can use it here. So again, that's another way to control and influence on the internet scale, on the social media scale. So I'm sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Well, this is why, in China, you're talking about how the Chinese people are brainwashed. And they're brainwashed through brutal tactics. They're tortured. They're removed from their families are threatened. You talk against the Chinese government. If you play along and you become a Communist Party member, I made a faux pas the last time I said 90,000 members of the Chinese Communist Party. It's 90 million 500,000 Communist Party members. They're actual official members. All the rest are expendable as far as they're concerned, I'm sure. So if you go against, as the first 3 doctors did, they're all dead. The Communist Party is brutal. And it's interesting to get into conversations, because I think the ignorance in America, because the lack of media reporting, the lack of investigative reporting, and the effectiveness of the propaganda that China has perpetrated on the entire world,
Right.
that they are a developing nation wanting democracy, right? You're laughing.
As long as they can keep Chinese people living in poor living conditions, they can always claim they are a developing country. Although they can have 150 countries in Belt and Road Initiative, they can buy the whole Hollywood.
Yes.
It's still developing.
But how long has China been in existence? How are they a developing nation still? To me, it's something developing as I look at the growth period of a child. My child is developing until they're 18 years old. And after that, yes, they're still developing, but they're a young adult now, and they need to take on the responsibilities of a young adult.
It's a lie through United Nations.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
It's a lie.
It's a lie. World Trade Organization, the TTP, the Transatlantic Trade Partnership was a big farce on all of the nations, and I understand that even further, knowing about the Belt and Road Initiative, because they wanted, and this is where it was the worst trade agreement ever created, based on understanding the Belt and Road Initiative, understanding the TTP, the Transatlantic Trade Partnership, of throttling back America's development in order for the rest of the countries to catch up. But if you look at that agreement, and everybody out there, you got to look this up and really do your reading into it, because It will show you exactly what's going on and why this administration, along with the State Department, is right on the money. And it leads me to believe that this is the reasons why this virus got let out, because they needed to stop it. They needed to stop it, period. Now, you look at the college campuses, and you go to graph number F, Sam, and you look at that, and the Confucius Institute is the way in which they went into the colleges and started taking. What is that? Tell us about that.
So Confucius Institute is a Chinese history and language program sponsored by the Chinese government. And it's a free program operated in more than 100 universities in the U.S. and more than 500 high schools. In high school, it's called Confucius Classroom. So it's a free Chinese program, but and of course, like everyone say, oh, it's a free program. Let's just take advantage of it. But in reality, it does not teach any Confucianism. It teaches the Communist Party's version of Chinese history. And so, for example, you cannot talk about 3 T's, like no Tibet, no Tiananmen Square, no Taiwan.
Right.
And teachers are recruited from China. They must sign a contract that they cannot practice Falun Gong. And oftentimes in local universities, for example, in University of Maryland and in UC San Diego, Confucius Institute block these universities from inviting Dalai Lama from coming to give the commencement speech. So once Confucius Institute control this university, enter this university, they would influence the whole university's attitude about education towards China. And what do they teach in the history? Just one example about the Korean War, okay? From one of these videos, that's shown in the screenshot of this video of Confucius Institute, it teaches the Korean War, history of Korean War. It said Americans invaded North Korea, and the purpose was to invade China, and that's how Korean War started. And that was exactly what I learned in China about the Korean War. I didn't know anything until I came here.
Right.
But we're talking about a UCLA, okay? You spend tens of $1,000s every year sending your kids to UCLA to learn Chinese, and that's what they learn about the U.S. history. You're spending so much money to send them to UCLA to get them brainwashed into something like, a Chinese student to come back and turn against America. And I'm not surprised any journalist graduating from UCLA would write very pro-Communist Party articles on Los Angeles Times. They don't even need to be bribed to do that because they were already brainwashed when they took Chinese lesson in universities like that.
Well, this is where I've been really surprised talking to a lot of the college graduates who actually come out and say that socialism and communism hasn't been given the opportunity to succeed. It's a great governance model, but it hasn't been given the opportunity to succeed. And it's like, wait a minute. What are they teaching you in school?
Right, exactly. What am I paying for?
You really begin to wonder what's being taught and why history is a very, very valuable tool, but it's the history of America is not being taught. They are the other countries are rewriting their histories to make them seem palatable to the world.
And here's what's scary about that real quick. Everybody knows that change begins from the bottom up. So if you can influence the youth and if you get them to believe the propaganda, then that is something that they could possibly perpetuate and pass on to their coworkers, to their friends, to anybody that crosses their path from the time they're 18, 20, 21 years old and carries that with them. So unless someone or something comes along that corrects that misguided information, then it gets perpetuated.
Well, this is why the Chinese government has made it a major initiative to get into the colleges. They've been doing it for how many years now? A couple decades, easily?
Yeah, a couple of decades.
Yeah, easily.
Now they operate more than 1,000 Confucius Institute, more than 500 Confucius Institute all over the world, including Italy, Belgium, and also like more than 1,000 Confucius classrooms in high schools. And besides Confucius Institute, they also have ways to influence American professors. Anyone studying Chinese history, right? you face a dilemma. If you speak the truth, you never get a visa to visit China to do research.
Right.
But if you say something pro-communist party, you get red carpet treatment. You get invited to China for luxurious trips for free, and then you may even get fundings from the Chinese government to sponsor your research. So even without the Confucius Institute, any professor teaching Chinese history have to make a choice. Do you want to speak the truth and end up like living a very difficult research life, or you can have a glorious research career by being invited to China and get all this like a nice treatment, get funding, get tons of students, write books, publish everything. I mean, but these are professors teaching our students, our next generation. And that's been going on for decades, more than Confucius Institute. The Chinese government has a long history of inviting intellectuals from the US to China for this kind of red carpet treatment. They were invited to give lectures in Chinese universities. Every student in the classroom was chosen ahead of time. Every question asked was chosen ahead of time. Every individual they meet in the trip was chosen ahead of time and arranged.
Wow.
This is it, like I said, after this virus is gone, the United States, the world has to deal with China. And I hope this is a major wake-up call to the world and how much of their own sovereignties they've been giving away in their own homelands through their media, through their colleges, through their newspapers, through everything. I mean, it is, and I've looked at it. I always try to be a couple steps ahead, and I'm watching the news media. I'm watching my opponent in my race as well, and they're all butting up to China. Like China was so good, China was so transparent, China was so this, and we need to get along with the World Health Organization. But the ignorance of the populace. This is why I read that in the very beginning from Stalin. You know, the stupidity, how easy it is because when you rewrite history, people become ignorant of why we're here today. And this is why even your sign out all the time when ignorance, prevails.
Right.
Yes, it's so eloquent. What is the one thing you would like to see the world do in regards to dealing with China after this virus is done? What do you think we should do? What kind of protocols?
Number one, take down the Great Firewall on Chinese internet.
And
Because
the great firewall is the
on
internet and just getting information to the Chinese people and
Yeah.
out too.
Yes.
So that way the Chinese people can pick up their iPhone and say, look, this is what's going on.
Yeah,
Right.
because I think the reason the Communist Party can have this power is because they can keep Chinese people brainwashed.
Right.
And that's why they're so afraid of Falun Gong, because they cannot infiltrate into Falun Gong like how they control church. Because they control Christian church by controlling the church leaders. They force the church leaders, to join the Communist Party to like brainwash the rest of church members. But Falun Gong is loose. Anyone can practice it. Everyone just follow traditional Chinese culture. That's why they persecute Falun Gong. Mm-hmm. And like the reason they keep the internet, brainwash them is to keep the internet. Once we get rid of the Great Firewall on the internet, the Chinese people will learn the truth. They will overthrow the Communist Party. China have no more Communist Party, will become a normal society. That's probably the easiest solution than tariff or trade war. And I feel like that's a reasonable request because our companies definitely have the ability to do that. Cisco helped the Chinese government to build the Great Firewall on internet, and Microsoft has been helping China to do all this facial recognition and everything.
Yeah.
We should use our technology to take down that wall.
I fully agree. One of the things that I've always been impressed because I was introduced to Yan probably 6 years ago with the Epoch Times. So anybody out there that wants to read more in-depth stories, they're always coming out with the in-depth stories of what's happening in China. The Epoch Times, E-P-O-C-H. I spelled that right? Mm-hmm. Times. And get a subscription to it. I mean, it's actually fascinating. We as Americans are ignorant of what's happening in China.
Right.
We as Americans have no idea of the brutality and the regime that's running that country as well, but have the ambitions by 2049 to run the world. And this particular administration is the first one to stand up to it. We may be suffering the consequences for it. We may be suffering the consequences of this virus being unleashed on the world. Because when you do take the moment to set the pieces of the puzzle up, they denied that it was a laboratory-generated virus. They denied it. They said no, it was a natural. It came out of a bat and snakes in the wild. There was another wild animal too. They said it might have come out of. Now we're finally getting it out that it was in a laboratory. It was accidentally. But yet you look at the steps that were taken after that from the Chinese Communist Party of buying up all of the PPE throughout the world, billions of dollars of it in January. They knew what was going to happen. The fact that they stopped, and we talked about this on the last episode, where Shanghai and Beijing were the lowest cases of the coronavirus, the lowest death rates. And it's because now we're finding out that travel from Wuhan to the rest of China was forbidden. But the Chinese people could leave Wuhan to all other countries, and that's how it spread all throughout the world. China will be and should be held accountable. What that's going to look like, we don't know at this moment, but it will need to be held accountable. I hope all of their ambitions, I hope the Belt and Road Initiative gets derailed completely. I think America needs to step up to the plate. The industries here throughout the world need to understand that every country has a responsibility for manufacturing and supply chains, even though they may be interwoven. But in situations like this, a country needs to be able to have the ability to stand on its own and supply its own national security interest on these kind of things. I want to thank you again. We're going to have you back because this is not going away. It's not going away. I still want you back. I think that, as I said, this virus is going to go away, but how we deal with China afterwards is very important, and that's a key thing to me. And that's something that I would be addressing as a congressman if elected, is actually looking at that in very much in depth, because I have felt this way for over 15 years, that China is the world's biggest threat. And the more and more I find out about it, the more and more I am super convinced of it, that we need to, and more congressmen are talking about it, about holding the accountability and opening up the international courts for lawsuits to be brought against China. And it needs to happen. But thank you once again for coming, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you. I have one more comment. Don't underestimate your individual voice. I mean, I'm just an individual. I'm speaking on behalf of myself because I went through all of this. So after watching our video, please share our program with everyone you know, because you never know who's going to watch it, and people will continue to spread the information.
Absolutely. A voice is a powerful voice. It's as powerful as the coronavirus. One person gets the coronavirus, they give it to 9. Those 9 give it to 9 more. By the time the second or third generation, 61,000 people. So one voice is extremely powerful. And the reality of China, the reality of what's happening there, needs to be spoken about all the time. And there's a lot of data out there. I've dug up so much that it shocks you. And there's one on the internet, and I talked about it a little bit, and it was talking about when you buy products from China, this is what you're supporting. And it showed the Chinese Communist military, police basically. They shot a woman in the head, and the head was gone. I mean, this is how devastating. This is happening now. Not yesterday, not 20 years ago, not 30 years ago. It happened even more, I'm sure, back then. But this is still happening now. I stopped buying Chinese products a long time ago because I didn't trust it. That was that simple. I just didn't trust the quality and the cleanliness of anything coming out of China. So I've already done that. But now digging further and deeper into the problems and how this brutal regime, this mafia of the world is acting, retribution needs to take place, and it will take place. Ted, bring it on home.
I want to thank the audience and everyone for tuning in. Be sure to tune in next week. And remember, ignorance prevails when rational minds sit back and do nothing. Stay safe and be well.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.